All right, everyone. It's time for dessert. The playoffs have begun.
You are Locked On MLB, your daily MLB podcast. Part of the Locked On Podcast Network, your team every day.
Hello, baseball fans. Welcome to Locked On MLB, part of the Locked On Podcast Network, where it's your team every day. This is the daily podcast. We talk about all of Major League Baseball and now the Major League Baseball playoffs. I'm your host, Paul Francis Sullivan. Please, I'm begging. Where did my lower third go? I just had it there. There it is. Call me Sully. I've been a baseball podcaster for a while now, and we're wrapping up season 6 here on the Locked On Podcast Network. And by the way, I have a few fans coming over here who were following me on Locked On A's. I did my last Locked On A's episode a few days ago, and welcome aboard. This episode is brought to you by Booking.com, more like Booking. Yeah. The right state can make you a fan of any city, even A's fans loving Sacramento or Las Vegas. Book today on Booking.com, the official accommodation partner of Major League Baseball. Get the Booking.com app today. And follow us at Locked On MLB Pods on Twitter or whatever it's called now. And on Instagram, I'm your pal Sully. But Sully Baseball on Twitter, Sully Baseball Podcast on Instagram. Well, we had 4 playoff games in one day. We're going to have that again tomorrow. We may have that the next day. We know we're going to have that a couple of days over the weekend. That's a lot of fun. We're going to go through some of the highlights of today, what it means. At the end of this episode, I'm going to talk about how I would personally tweak when these games go on. I have some definite ideas about that. But anyway, let's get to the business of things. Um, well, the first game that was on today was Houston versus Detroit. And it's funny, Houston seems to get the short end of the stick sometimes in these playoff schedulings. They tend to be the first one there, mainly because they know that most of America hates the Astros. I'm sorry, Astros fans, that's just true. And they don't think this is going to be the big money making show, I guess. I don't know. There were a bunch of empty seats there. It was an afternoon game in the daytime. Um, Again, I'm going to address something a little bit later. As it was going on around my lunchtime. So, and as you know, I'm a special ed teacher in Pasadena, and I have a student. I'm not going to mention his name, but he's a very, very big baseball fan who is on the autism spectrum, and he's my baseball buddy. The two of us love to watch these games, especially when I put it on during the lunchtime, and we got to see Detroit put some runs on the board. Tarik Skubal was everything you would want him to be. He was the ace you would want him to be as he threw the 6 scoreless innings. He struck out 6 Astros, and he was terrific. And Jake Rogers, let's give a hand for Jake Rogers, who started the rally that was basically all of Detroit's scoring was done in a 3-run second inning. But Framber Valdez, who is a big game pitcher, I think he should have won the 2022 World Series MVP. He was off his game. He let up 9 base runners in 4 1/3 innings, 7 with hits, 2 with walks. It was the one inning where the Tigers scored anything, the 3 runs in the second, but it put the Astros on their heels, especially with Skubal pitching pretty well. Skubal got into a little bit of trouble in the 6th. I personally would have pushed Skubal, easy for you to say, to the 7th, have him come out. He only threw 88 pitches, and you got another game tomorrow. Maybe I'm of that mindset. It isn't just old school, new school. I think some new school things are smart. And I think the Tigers have used their pitching staff very well, thank you very much, over the last couple of months. But one of the things that I have observed with the Tigers over the last couple of months is Skubal is a legit ace. He's going to win the Cy Young Award, and the rest of the pitching staff has been cut and paste. And Hinch has done a fabulous job of cutting and pasting. But I thought, why not let Skubal at least come out in the 7th? Again, he had not yet thrown 90 pitches. If he gave you 7 innings, Ideally, it gives you 9, and you have a completely rested and ready bullpen going for tomorrow. But they didn't. And Vest was great. He struck out 4 in an inning and a third. And then they took him out. In came Holton. And again, I don't quite understand all the moves. Holton threw 2 pitches, and they removed him for Foley, and Foley didn't have it. Now, when Foley came in the ninth and the Astros started rolling, every single Astro hater in the world was doing a collective gulp. Bregman singled, you know, drove in. Who did he drive in? Okay, yeah, it was Diaz got the hit that made it 3-1, and then uh, there were runners on second and third, and McCormick walked, and they wound up bringing in Brisky to face Jason Hayward. And I have to say, when Hayward was up, I thought I thought he was gonna hit a home run. I thought it was gonna be Yordan Alvarez against Robbie Ray in the opening game of the 2022 division series when the Mariners were on the verge of winning game 1, and then Alvarez hits the walk-off home run with 2 outs. I just pictured it. I just pictured the Hayward home run. And Brisky, who, he let up a walk, he had the runner on, the bases were packed, and then Hayward hit a line drive. Now, it wasn't necessarily a great play by Torkelson. He just was in the exact right spot. He was in the exact right spot. If that was a little bit to the left, I think if that was still a little bit to the left of Torkelson, it would have gone down the right field line, certainly would have tied the game, probably would have won the game. By the way, a big hand to Michael Kay, the voice of the Yankees, who called that game. He did a great job, and he had a line at the end. I forget what it was, something like, "And all of Motown could sigh relief," I think is what he said. But there you go. I mean, with that, I picked I picked um the the Tigers. I picked the Astros to win that series 2-1, and the Astros could very well win tomorrow. It is not a foregone conclusion. Yes, the teams who win game 1 tend to go on to win these series, but Hunter Brown is pitching very well, and they have to do the cut and paste thing with Holton starting for the what is it? Holton starting? Holton came out of the bullpen. Maybe that's why he only threw 2 pitches. I guess Holton's going to be doing the opener act. See, this is what the Tigers do. You don't know what the hell they're doing half the time. So, they Hunter Brown's a very good pitcher, and Detroit's going to be doing the cut and paste. The cut and paste could work great, or the cut and paste can blow up in your face. This series is far from over, and it was a line drive by Hayward in the exact wrong place, away from being 1-0 Houston. But Detroit, hey, give Brisky, give Skubal, give what's his doodle, Jake Rogers, all the credit in the world. The Tigers did what they need to do. They went into a hostile territory. They won game 1. Now they have to go on and win game 2. Now, when we come back, I want to talk about the best pitch game of the day and the single wildest game of the day, which happened one right after another. Hey, let's hear a little bit from our friends over at FanDuel. Hey, NFL fans, you can start the season with a bang on FanDuel, America's #1 sportsbook. So when you get a hunch in the middle of a game, you can check out the latest stats, view live play-by-play, and so much more on the same page where you place your bets. You will get started with $200 in bonus bets guaranteed when you place your first $5 bet. You heard me right. $200 guaranteed in bonus bets when you place your first $5 bet. That's at fanduel.com. You know FanDuel. It's America's #1 sportsbook. Hey, let's talk to our friends over at PrizePicks. You know what PrizePicks is. I can tell you my mom doesn't know what PrizePicks is, but PrizePicks is the best place to get real money sports action. With over 10 million members and billions of dollars in award winnings, PrizePicks has made daily fantasy sports accessible to all. You just pick more or less on at least two players for a shot to win up to 100 times your cash. Run your game all season long at Prize Picks. And Prize was the only one real money daily fantasy sports platform with an injury insurance policy. So your lineups stay in play, even if one of your players gets injured, if your player leaves in the first half or doesn't return. Prize Picks keeps your lineup live. Want to play Prize Picks? Well, guess what? Prize Picks puts its members first. So all withdrawals are fast and safe and secure. When my picks hit, I get my money in as quick as 5 minutes. Sign up today. You get that $50 instantly when you play $5. You don't even need to win to get the $50 bonus. And Prize Picks is the best way to earn the real money this football season. Which players are going off? Which ones aren't? Make your picks in less than 60 seconds and return your sports opinions into real money all season long on Prize Picks. Download the Prize Picks app. Use the code Locked On MLB. Get $50 instantly after you play your first lineup. Download the app today. Use the code Locked On MLB. Get $50 instantly if you play your first lineup. And Prize Picks, run your game. The best pitched game today was undoubtedly between Baltimore and Kansas City. Now, I picked in this particular game. Or in this particular series, I should say. I picked KC over the Orioles. Mainly because I just think the Orioles have just not looked like the same team that they've been. They've been up, they've been down, and Kansas City has some very good pitching. And Cole Ragans, who I believe, did they steal him from Texas last year? Well, let me tell you something. 8 strikeouts, no walks, and 6 shutout innings against that lineup just shows you how out of sync that lineup is. Do you know who should be really, really angry? Corbin Burnes. Corbin Burnes came in, was acquired by Baltimore at the beginning of the year against Milwaukee, or from Milwaukee, to be an ace and to be that ace that they desperately needed last year when they got pushed out of the playoffs by the eventual World Series champion Texas Rangers. Well, he did his job. He pitched 8 innings and he only let up 1 run, 5 hits, and 1 walk. And was really, I mean, he just was pitched in a dominating fashion. Now, Bobby Witt Jr. drove in a run with a 2-out single in the 6th inning. But you know what? That's what Bobby Witt Jr. is going to do. And, drive in Garcia. And that shouldn't be enough for the Royals to coast to the victory. And it was. And, Reagan's was terrific. Long didn't let up a hit. Bubic got into trouble, but in came Lucas Ursag, who was part of the A's earlier this year. I know because I followed in Locked On A's, and that was one of the big KC pickups at the trade deadline. And look at that! Look what he did. He got a 4-out save. By the way, let's give Bobby Witt Jr. was terrific. Obviously, he drove in the only run in that series. But let's give Michael Garcia a hand. Garcia, there was the Royals got no extra base hits, but Garcia singled, walked, stole 2 bases, and scored the only run. That's going to go a long way for the Royals to go on and beat the Orioles in this series. As I said, in my predictions, I had the Royals going 2-0 against Baltimore. And look, if you're going to get that kind of performance by Corbin Burnes and walk away with a goosing egg, that's not going to be a good thing for them. And look, at Eflin is pitching for the Orioles. He's not a bad pitcher, but Seth Lugo is pitching for Kansas City. And while Tarik Skubal is going to win the Cy Young Award, Lugo led the league in Who Owns Baseball. and is going to be a strong Cy Young contender. The Orioles are in deep, deep trouble. They already shot their shot with their ace, and the ace pulled through, and the bats didn't. These bats have to wake up immediately in order for it to make any sense. And in order for the Orioles, the team I picked to win the American League pennant, to do anything. And boy, oh boy, if they get swept out of the playoffs again, they haven't won a playoff game since the final game of the 2014 division series against Detroit. Think about that. They got swept out of the ALCS by Kansas City in 2014. I really thought Baltimore was going to the World Series that year. Then they lose the game where Buck Showalter refuses to use the bullpen correctly, and Edwin Encarnacion homers. And then last year, despite being a 100-win team and winning the division, they get swept out of the dump by the eventual World Series champion Texas Rangers. And now, unless they figure out a way to solve Lugo, they're going to be swept out of the playoffs again. Absolutely. I mean, it was just it just was a mess. I mean, Cedric Mullins did his job. He doubled. He got more. Cedric Mullins got more extra base hits than the entire Royals lineup. You can't lose a game like that and put yourself on the 8 ball at home against Kansas City, who ostensibly is supposed to be the one team that's gassed. But here we are. And by the way, speaking of here we are, the wildest game of the night was between the Mets and the Milwaukee Brewers. And remember, the Brewers, save for making the NLCS in 2018, have been a real conundrum for Milwaukee fans, especially when you see how the teams that eliminated them, how they did. 2019, they had a late lead, but they blow it to Washington in the wild card game. The Nationals went on to win the World Series. In the COVID year, they have to play a wild card series against Los Angeles, who would go on to win the World Series. In 2021, they look like they have the best Brewers team in a while and had the pitching to go far, especially because they knew either the Giants or Los Angeles were going to be eliminated because of how stupid the division series was set up. But they wound up losing to the Braves again, who went on to win the World Series. In 2022, they missed the playoffs by one game. The team that was one game ahead of them, the Philadelphia Phillies, who went on to win the pennant. And then last year, they get bombed by the Arizona Diamondbacks in the wild card series, losing both games at home. And the Diamondbacks went on to the World Series. So it seems like this is good news for the Mets if they win tomorrow, because the World Series seems to go through Milwaukee. Now, when Contreras singled and Rhys Hoskins got hit by a pitch in the first, two things crossed my mind. Met fans, including my cousin David, was going to be pulling all of the hair out of their head. And Severino, who they didn't pitch in the second game in the weird doubleheader yesterday, did not look good that first inning. He did not. And I'm thinking, oh boy, the Brewers are going to take advantage of this. And they didn't. They didn't. When the final run is in a rally is a hit by pitch, that means 3 runners were left on base that didn't score. Now the Mets wound up taking the lead again on the Winker triple, and the Mets wound up scoring 3 in the second, but then Chiriot wound up tying the game, and the Brewers took the lead 4-3. And again, it looked like Severino was just not looking good. Now, at that moment, even though I don't get a decision. They lifted Peralta. Now, I don't know if he was hurt, but he hadn't yet thrown 70 pitches yet. And he wasn't great, but he also wasn't grotesque. He let up 2 hits, he let up a walk, and all 3 of those base runners scored. He did strike out 5 in 4 innings, but they went to the bullpen. Now, the Brewers bullpen has been pretty good, but Pumps and is how you pronounce his name? Pumps and Ashby, they were awful. And the Mets went on a 5-run rally in the 5th. And after that, the combination of Severino and Buto and Stanek, they didn't have to use Diaz. The Mets went on to win 8-4. I thought right then and there, why are you pulling Peralta now? Why? Get that extra inning. Push it. Try to why are you going to the bullpen just because he had one bad inning at that point? The bullpen collapsed, and now Milwaukee is staring once again at an early exit. Now, tomorrow, remember, the Mets are still gassed, but now they have all of the momentum behind them. Montas is pitching for Milwaukee. Sean Manaea is pitching for the Mets. And my main bit of advice is to A's fans, which is, good Lord, just look away. Hey, this episode is brought to you in part by our good friends over at booking.com. More like booking.yeah. The right stay can make you the fan of any city. And with booking.com, you can explore cities all across the US that you secretly want to learn more about. I wanted to know a lot about New York State. Took a fabulous trip over the summer to Buffalo. I saw some dear friends who live in Buffalo, and I found out that Buffalo is a beautiful city. It is. It's a really, really nice city. And then I went to a Bison's game that I used booking.com to get me a hotel in Syracuse, where I saw a Syracuse Mets game. But most importantly, I used booking.com to get me a fantastic hotel that was walking distance to both the lake and the Baseball Hall of Fame in Cooperstown. And let me tell you something, everywhere you went, everywhere I booked was absolutely terrific. Now, with hotels, bed and breakfast, vacation rentals, resorts, and so much more, you can find your perfect stay, whether it's Buffalo, Cooperstown, or anywhere in the U.S. And with Booking.com's wide variety of choice across the United States, you can go incognito to all your baseball rival cities. Booking.com delivers exactly the right U.S. stay for you. No matter what team you're rooting for this postseason, Booking.com can make you a fan of any city. So, Booking.com, the right stay can make you a fan. So, Booking.com, check it out. It's more like booking.yeah. All right, the final game was the Padres versus the Braves, and it was pretty much the game that I thought we all thought was going to turn out that way. The Braves were gassed, and they couldn't use Sale, and they had to use a poor AJ Smith Shar. Here's a fun fact I like about him. He pitched one game this year. One. The year before, he pitched 6. This was his 8th major league game, and he got to start a playoff game. And Fernando Tatis Jr. just met him with a home run, a 2-run home run in the second inning. And the Padres are rested, ready, and they jumped on him. Now, we got to give some credit to Aaron Bummer, maybe an unfortunate name, but he worked out of a jam in the second inning, gave the Braves 2 2/3 scoreless innings of relief. There you go. And give Michael Harris some credit. He got a pair of hits. But the real name was Michael King. Michael King, who was one of the big pieces in the Juan Soto trade. He was a pitcher for the Yankees and a darn talented one. And he showed why. He said that he felt the Padres won that deal. And the way he could be right is if he continues pitching well and Juan Soto signs with another team. Well, Michael King sure looked like a postseason ace today. He pitched 7 innings. He struck out 12 batters, and he didn't walk a single one. And the Padres just cruised to a 4-0 win. And I'm sorry, they're not going to be able to pitch Schwellenbach. They're not going to be able to pitch Sale. They are going to pitch Max Fried. he's a terrific big game pitcher. Um, Joe Musgrove is going to pitch for San Diego. I think there's too much firepower. I think that's one game. Obviously, Max Fried can win a game, but the Padres just look so good. The Braves, their offense just looks dead. They look deader than dead. Now, tomorrow we're going to do the same old thing, and they're in the same order. The Astros get the early game again against Detroit. That'll be at 2:30 on the East Coast, or here in California, be at 11:30, right around lunchtime. And 1:30 here on the West Coast, 4:30 on the East Coast, you got the Royals and the Orioles again. That should be a good game. Lugo versus Ethan. The Mets and the Brewers lock antlers at 7:30 in New York, 4:30 here in California. And then the final game, Braves Padres, it starts an hour later. I think baseball is missing out on something. When they did the 1995 playoffs, Bud Selig came up with the idea of the baseball network, and all the playoff games were going to start at the exact same time. And the thought process was everyone's going to get their games at the prime time. They'll have prime time ratings for each one of the games. Baseball is a local sport, so the local people watching at the best time, and it won't be spread all over creation and having to wonder which team will get the primetime slot. Well, it wasn't the right thing to do in 1995 because you weren't allowed to show the other games. It wasn't like, okay, the main game is on this, but the other will spread out on all over cable. It didn't work that way in 1995. And a lot of people complained. And so they went back to staggering the schedule. But now I think they can. With all the different streaming services and ways to watch it, whether it's on ESPN 1, 2, 3, if you get the ESPN app, or you could do the multi thing, the MLB network could carry it. They could do something along those lines. And right now, you're seeing that it's being shown on ABC, ESPN, ESPN2. Have them start all on prime time. And if you want to flip back and forth between them, you can. It'll be that great feeling like at the end of the season when all the games started at the same time. But this way, you get to watch the games that you want to watch. I'll be flipping back and forth. I'll be having a ball doing that. And everyone will be let's start everyone at 5 o'clock. Let's say it'll start at 7 o'clock East Coast time, which is 4 o'clock West Coast time. That way, every team is playing at a time, whether you're on the East Coast, West Coast, you'll be playing at a time where most of the fans will be able to watch the majority of the game. And you won't have empty seats in Houston. Granted, I like day baseball. I do. So it was cool to see Camden Yards in the daytime. But when you have the Astros playing at 2:30 East Coast time, they're under a roof. Why not have the Camden Yards game, in the sun if you're going to do it then? But I like my idea. Start them all at that time, or stagger them by 1 hour. Now they're staggered by 2 hours. Stagger them by 1 hour. So you watch the end of one game, then the next game, then the next game, the next game, one right after another. Well, either way, we're going to have fun. Another full day of watching playoff baseball. And we'll see who could actually extend this to a third game. We've only had one game 3 of a wild card series. That was San Diego versus the Mets a few years ago. Let's see if we can have 4 of them. I'd like to see 4 of them so we can have 4 do or die games. So follow us at Locked On MLB Pods on Twitter or on Instagram. I'm your pal Sully at Sully Baseball on Twitter, Sully Baseball Podcast on Instagram, talking about the first day of the playoffs and the Padres, Mets, Royals, and Tigers have put their teams in a pretty good place. This has been Locked On MLB. I am your host, Paul Francis Sullivan. Please call me Sully.